said that you should not be confused with subjectivism. But subjectivism means that it varies from person to person. You know, these cultural values or these standards that we have. It varies not just from culture to culture, but from person to person. Um, but there's problems with subjectivism. That one's pretty easily dismissed out of hand because morality is useless except as it applies to individuals, but never interpersonally, never between us. Adolf Hitler, Ted Bundy, and Gandhi can be equally moral, given the reasons, their perspective. Ted Bundy certainly made that argument, and if you ever get a chance to watch his not watch, but listen to the audio tapes that he made of his confession, telling about why he did what he did, very interesting. And he said, look, I know Jeremy Bentham's hedonism, that really there's no difference between me killing someone and me eating a hamburger. Value, moral worth, same difference. So I'd just rather kill people. And Bentham stated that. I think Ted Bundy certainly took a lot of liberties with that, but he was using that in his argument. Ted Bundy was extremely smart, well spoken, very articulate, evil man, evil. Okay, so it assumes that one problem that we have is that it assumes that every society is perfect. And this is problematic because some people think that this is kind and gentle and a much better way to live our lives. You have to think that you cannot go into any society and you cannot say that any certain thing is wrong with that. And there are several human rights groups who would beg to differ with you, and they make the distinction based on what creates thriving, what creates flourishing among human beings, and what creates peace and stability. Um, if it were the case, we would never be able to say anything against slavery. We'd never be able to say anything against female circumcision. There certainly seems to be some problems. Honor killings, couldn't say anything about that. Bride kidnapping in Eastern Europe, there seems to be some issues. Some people in those countries seem to have some issues with that. So we need to talk about those. There's no way to get in relativism. There's no way to get a minimal moral aim of preventing the Hobbesian state of nature. And there's no social cohesion, nor an independent set of norms that bind people together and make life livable because everybody's just doing what they want to do. And that seems to be fine until people interrupt our things. And then we seem to have a problem with that. It's fair and it's okay until it happens to me. And then I don't like it very much. Ethical relativism is that different cultures have different moral codes, and the moral code of the society is determined by the society. If the society says it's okay, if it's right, then it is right. And Ruth Benedict went into different cultures, and she said, moral principles are made right by virtue of the cultural acceptance. And there are certain things in cultures that are accepted. Female circumcision is accepted. Why is it accepted? And you need to take a look at that. Who's the one who is proposing that women get that done, and who is enforcing that? Certainly not the women of this society. So those are things that need to be looked at as well. What it says is, and the idea is that we don't want to be ethnocentristic, and I think that is a valid point. I think it's a good point, but it doesn't mean that we turn our back or turn our eyes and say, I don't see that, it's not happening, that these things are not fair and not right that are happening to other people. They're going to say there is no objective standard we can use to determine if our society is better than another. Our moral code has no special status, but is one among many. And the attitude of tolerance toward other cultures. Anything else is just ignorance, and so we'll follow this out. His argument is this. Melville Herkovitz argues that ethical relativism entails intercultural tolerance. And take a look at the argument there. If morality is relative to its culture, then there is no independent basis for criticizing the morality of any other culture but one's own. If there is no independent way of criticizing any other culture, we ought to be tolerant of the moralities of that culture. Morality is relative to its culture, therefore we ought to be tolerant of the moralities of other cultures. And follow the argument out, but number 3 goes in and negates the first part. They kind of cancel each other out, and then that second part, then there is no independent basis for criticizing, and that's how you get the conclusion. the cultural differences argument, thinking that something is right and something actually being right are very different. And a lot of times I don't even think people think they're right. We have justifications for why we do things. People disagree about moral standards even when we have empirical evidence. Take, for example, the Flat Earth Society. Someone was telling me last semester that they used to stop by his record store and drive him crazy about the Flat Earth Society, which is humorous and funny. But the idea is they have kind of their physics wrong. They have their topography, their geography. It's all wrong. They don't have it figured out. They feel that Earth's gravity is at the South Pole. And if it were the case that the Earth were round, then everything would shift down to the bottom. This is wrong. Vampires. The issue of vampires. People certainly believe that vampires exist. There are groups that believe they exist, and actually you and I not believing that they don't exist, this perpetuates the problem. But does it follow that just because we disagree, and certainly there are a lot of disagreements, but just because we disagree, does it mean that there is no valid or objective moral truth? And I think we've slipped on the distinction there. We've equivocated on that. We really need to be certain. Just because we disagree doesn't mean there isn't an answer. That seems odd. People do disagree about moral standards. There were issues, and I think that because we don't have the facts perfectly on these things. What about the issue with the cows in India? This has to do with a religious point of view. And the cows in India, this one actually wouldn't work, but the widow burning that goes on, even people in those cultures don't believe that that should happen, and this was perpetuated by the men in the society. These widows having to be burned when their husbands died. This was done for a lot of practical reasons. Eskimos, they used to leave the old people to die in the snow. Why did they do that? They used to kill female babies at birth. It was a practical reason. Do they do it anymore? No. But it didn't have to do with it. I don't think they were thinking this is not wrong. They were justifying the reasons why they would say that's okay to do that. Is it possible for societies to thrive and progress without a minimal morality? At least a few prohibitions on behavior. There needs to be a few prohibitions on human behavior for social flourishing. What about cultural practices that really are undesirable? Sometimes in ethical discourse, we don't have the facts right. Ethics is not a science. We have no way of finding out what is right empirically, and this is what people will say. Plato and quite a few philosophers are really working to prove that. I mean, geometry comes into play for that very reason. But consider the case, there's the honor killings, there's excision, female circumcision. We have to consider those issues, really look at the facts, really look at the arguments for that, and who's arguing for that. One of the issues, too, that a lot of people will back off, especially in the United States, will back off somebody says, don't impose your beliefs on me. And relativism finds a following because people believe that people should not have other beliefs imposed upon them, judging that others are wrong. Moral oughts in imposing one's personal beliefs. Is it wrong to impose beliefs? Well, what if the belief is right? And is it correctly called an imposition? Moreover, wouldn't it be wrong to impose my will on others? And relativism states that, I can do whatever I want to, as long as, and some people will say, as long as I don't hurt anybody, but that doesn't follow in relativism. As long as I don't hurt anybody is an absolute moral standard. I can't appeal to that in relativism. So I have to really consider that the fact that somebody is going to interrupt what I'm doing. Isn't it more wrong for people to impose their will on me? And that seems to be an issue in relativism, that everybody can do what they want to, and sometimes there's going to be a conflict in what other people want to do. Violence and deception are certainly an